Men who have had a cruel wife or girlfriend, what did you do to get out of it? I dated this girl for over a year because I just couldn't figure out how to get rid of her. She was insanely jealous, and any discussion of my unhappiness in a relationship just brought accusations of cheating. These inevitably led to harming. I never really felt like I could fight back. Any action to defend myself would probably have ended with me getting arrested. She was much smaller than me, so most police would most likely take her side. I was trapped. Eventually, her father came to visit. The first time he and I were alone together, he immediately asked if I was okay. He said he knew how she could be. This confused me at first. I barely knew him and didn't know if I could trust him. Just told him everything was fine. It had been for a few weeks. He stayed a few days, and by the end of his visit, I could see he was just a cool dude who knew his daughter had issues. A couple months later, I reached my breaking point. I was miserable. I just wanted her out of my life. I looked in her address book for his number and called. I told him I couldn't take it anymore and was trapped unless I defended myself with physical force. He sighed and said, "Can you hang on till Thursday?" He told me he'd make the 8-hour drive to my house if I could wait a few days. On Thursday afternoon, we were standing in the kitchen where there was a knock on the door. She answered, surprised to see her dad. "What are you doing here, Dad?" He just shrugged and stared at me. I blurted it out. "I'm breaking up with you. We're done." She charged at me, but he was ready. He grabbed her from behind and put her in a full Nelson hold. She was dragged like this across my driveway and thrown into the back seat of his car. The last time I saw her, she was trying to kick out his rear window as he drove away. There's a good possibility I may owe my life to that dude. I feel really bad for him. She was otherwise a wonderful person, but if she lost her temper, look out. Hopefully she found help. Her mom passed away when she was young. Don't remember how, but mostly raised by a single dad. This was before cell phones and the internet. Never talked to her again. If she called, I wasn't home to answer. She did contact my parents years later looking for me, but they didn't give up the info. I looked up her profile on Facebook since then. Seems to be doing okay. And to the real important question, yes, she was amazing in bed. Wow. Imagine the kind of tantrum she must have thrown while growing up to make the dad so chilled about it. Story 2. I hope we're counting emotional and verbal mistreatment. The simple answer is that I let her leave, taking the risk that she might try to hurt herself in retaliation. She used breaking up and veiled threats as a tool to guilt and control me. Drove all my friends away. I wasn't even talking to my roommate hardly, a man I consider my brother and quite possibly my closest friend and who lived in the next room. Constant belittling of my friends. Did the hot and cold thing, 1 minute praising me like I hung the moon, the next minute accusing me of being a cheater or of wanting to cheat. It was really weird looking back. When she started trying to weasel her way in between me and my nuclear family, I knew I had to take the chance that she might hurt herself to get back at me after breaking up. I woke up one morning to screamed accusations of cheating and threats to leave and put myself out of her misery, and I just sort of raised my head off my pillow and mumbled, "All right, I'll drive you to your parents' house in a bit." She was shocked. I knew immediately that I made the right decision because she looked like a kid whose sandcastle had just been kicked over. I just left the job we both worked at. Obviously, she had to keep the leash taut. I heard from a couple people there who actually knew me firsthand that she did indeed attempt. I never found out the method. I wasn't interested in hearing details. After recovering, she proceeded to talk about how horrible I'd been to her, confirming every asinine grapevine rumor she could. Never mind the fact that I rarely had any more than 20 minutes out of her sight at the time. A few of my female coworkers put in for transfers, since she pointed them out as cohorts of my infidelity, and they instantly became personas non grata. I spent a good couple weeks blocking the threats and hate messages from jealous exes and new suitors. Don't ever try to get her back, blah blah blah. I didn't care at that point. I had honestly been pushed to the point that I had to cut the toxicity out of my life, even if it cost her hers. I haven't dated in the years since. Just the knowledge that I was pushed to the point of not caring if a woman ended herself bothers me. I know I'm not responsible and that she's sick, but I'd rather never do anything like that again. I'm mostly past the whole thing now, and I've heard from mutual friends that she's actually doing much better. She got healthy, started seeing a therapist, and made a bunch of positive changes in her life. A friend said that her failed relationship with me was the catalyst for change. So maybe I helped the world get a little brighter. Still haven't talked to her. Never will, again. But at least there's ostensibly a quasi-happy ending. My sad little Grinch heart goes out to everyone who's dealt with this. It was about 3 years ago now, and I have an excellent support group through my close friends and my family. I'm lucky enough to have a really healthy support group that cares about me and didn't judge me for staying so long. New suitors messaged him to tell him that he better not try to get her back. That's so pathetic of him. Story 3. I would classify my ex as an emotionally cruel and manipulative person. This culminated in her cheating on me, denying it when I found out, and then trickle-truthing me in our group therapist for months. I eventually decided that I had gained everything I could from our group sessions and ended all contact with her. I blocked her everywhere. Months later, she contacted me through GChat of all things, saying that she had information that affected my health and that I would suffer the consequences if I did not reply. I did and was told a few things. Number 1, she allegedly had hepatitis C. Doubtful, really, since it was so rare to get from hospitals. Number 2, she had seen her therapist, who now totally agreed that I was at fault. A lie, since I'd seen her only a week before for an individual session, and she mentioned having not seen my ex in months. Number 3, she was now seeing 2 other therapists that both agree that I was a villain. Whatever. After our conversation, during which I told her that I thought she was a dangerous person for me to be around, she contacted many mutual friends on Facebook and told them that I was unsupportive during her time of need. Several of them, mostly those who only knew me as her boyfriend, unfriended me. No big loss. I got tested for STDs just in case, was found clean, and haven't heard from her since. Story 4. After 10 years, I started setting and holding boundaries and gave myself a bottom line for what kind of treatment I would and would not accept, largely thanks to advice from my therapist and some really good friends. She started sensing that she no longer had control over me and made a big show about moving out to try and get me back under her thumb. I just continued holding my boundaries and bottom line, which further enraged her. She caused a huge dramatic scene by coming over in the middle of the night demanding to take the dog. I changed the locks, the garage code, the Netflix password, kicked her off the Google Play family plan, made a therapy appointment, and scheduled a meeting with a lawyer to get my options. Armed with this new information, I told her I was done, and that she could lawyer up if she wanted to, but that I was willing to pay as much as it took me to make sure I was out. That was a month ago, and I've never felt better. If you hear a little voice inside you saying to get out, let it take over. Become your own advocate. Get your life back. Not the Netflix password. Story 5. My first girlfriend was wicked cruel. I tried to break up with her after a few weeks, and she hurt her wrists in front of me to prove how much she loved me. I was terrified. We ended up dating 2 years because she would threaten to end it all, and I was not in a good place due to my mom's gambling. I was homeless for a few months, and she tried to make me depend on her nonstop. When I finally broke it off, I just cut all contact. She had moved schools the week prior. She stalked me for years after and told people I did stuff to her, even though we never went beyond kissing. I lost a lot of friends because of her lies. The last time I had contact with her was when I was in Iraq and my mother had just passed away. She sent me a message on Facebook saying condolences for my mom. I didn't even know she passed yet. She even sent flowers to her funeral. She terrifies me. To clarify, she was telling my friends that I coerced her into intimacy before she was ready and wouldn't stop pressuring her, which was not true. My friends didn't stop talking to me, but kind of became distant. One of them later, unbeknownst to me, told the girl I was talking to what my ex said, and all of a sudden she just blocked me. I wouldn't find out until later what he said to her and was mad. Luckily, it seems the stalking has mostly stopped. I don't use my Facebook anymore with my real name, and the last I heard from her was a letter she sent me from a fake Facebook account about how much she still loves me shortly after my mother's passing. However, there was some good that came out of it because one of my closest friends I met about a year after that knew her from her new school, and when he heard my name, he said, "Oh, she told me to despise you if I ever met you, but you don't seem anything like the stories she has told me." It still causes issues in my dating life because anything that remotely resembles a guilt trip kind of irks me. But my current girlfriend is amazing and has helped me a lot. Story 6. Emotional cruelty counts? Possibly. She pushed me to the point where I just stopped doing anything that made me happy. I was beyond depressed. Still kind of bounces back and forth depending on the day, but it was bad. One day she started an argument and jokingly asked when I would move out. I told her by the end of the week. There it is. My ex and I were together for a total of 6.5 years. Through that time, she did nothing but complain about how I never do anything to make her life easier, even though I worked hard at my job, at school, trying to help her with her school, her job, keeping her house up to date electrical-wise, etc. She would put me down any chance she got, talking trash on my family on a regular basis, telling me my hobbies were outdated and no one would respect me with them. My music, taste in movies, my friends, even my dreams were all trash to her. I told her about my career choice of training to be a police officer, and she just put me down, telling me I would never make it. Told her I wanted to move out of state to Arizona, and she called me stupid because I wanted to be closer to my family and I love the desert. I started to shun my family and friends because I was just scared of the arguments. I started showing signs of depression, and she would just tell me I had no reason to be depressed. She started to threaten me with a breakup every chance that she got, play mind games with me, and then, for no reason at all, give me the silent treatment for days. There was no hand-holding, no kissing, no hugs, especially if we were out in public. Once she started to bring up me moving out, I finally realized what was going on. A friend took me in, and I immediately got up and left. She got angry at me for it, like everything else, and I just said screw it and changed my phone number. Since then, I've gotten incredibly close to one of my good friends, and she now wants to go out on a date with me. We have a hell of a lot in common, and her family loves me. She makes me feel wanted and appreciated. So, to all of you, remember, there are other women out there that will appreciate us for who we are, for what we do, and will make us feel amazing. Keep your heads up and don't let anyone get in the way of your dreams or who you are. Story 7. I got out of it by moving back in with my dad at the age of 38. We'd been together for about 10 years in a toxic relationship. She was manipulative and emotionally cruel. I was no saint either. Then she started getting physical, and that was when I had a moment of clarity. She was trying to wrestle my debit card away from me so she could go buy more drinks, and I realized if I kept going on with her, things would get worse physically, and I would be the one going to jail. So I threw some stuff in a bag and left for my dad's house. I ended up staying there for about a month while she spiraled further out of control. Eventually, she agreed to help and spent a week in a detox, and I was able to move back home. I got sober as a result, and with a lot of help from my family, friends, and things I don't understand, I've stayed sober since. After a detox, she spent about 3 months in a recovery house. Sadly, it didn't take, and she continued to drink and use, but I couldn't let her go. We dated off and on during the time she could stay sober. Eventually, she started seeing someone else and played us off each other, dragging me back into the thick of it. She moved back in with me about 2 years after I first left. History repeated itself, and about 18 months later, I had to head back over to my dad's house because she was getting worse and more physical than ever. Just over a month later, she went away to a recovery community for around 9 months. She managed to get to a year of sobriety, and we went out for a few times, but she was still manipulative and started playing me off other guys again. Then she relapsed. I cut it off and went no contact. She would ping me every 6 months or so, but we never engaged again. Overall, the relationship devoured over 17 years of my life, and I'm still not completely over it. She passed away about 6 months ago. Story 8. Had a girlfriend once that had her crazy well for a while, but I had a few experiences with PG versions in the past with other women and started to see the signs. Like if I didn't text back right away, she would get angry and possessive and angry. She was always wondering where I was, who I was with, etc. Insisted I see her every night or must be mad at her and would apologize for whatever she did to make me mad. I was in school full-time and worked full-time to pay for it, so I did not have a lot of free time. Didn't matter, that sort of thing. It got to the point where she was threatening to end it all if I didn't text her back, even while I was at work. So I did what I thought was best and told her we're done. I totally cut contact with her after that, cold turkey. I make it my purpose to never go near where she lived or where she worked. Blocked her on social media, no contact. I felt like a total schmuck, but there was no letting this girl off easy without a serious storm. She would have all-day conversations with herself through text without me saying a word, beginning with, "Please don't leave me, yada yada." Then she would get angry and send full-page texts of all bold, awful words. "I'm the best you'll ever have," and "Sorry I was yelling, I just love you so much." And if you don't text me back, I'm going to end myself. Then I'm sorry for saying that. This happened every day for a month. I felt terrible for her, but I knew that if I texted back even once, she would win. I would call her friends to tell them she needed their help and almost call the police a few times to check on her. But it was all a ploy for me to respond to her. She would never go through with it. So I ended up contacting a friend of mine who was a cop for advice, and he said to change her phone number and forget about it. So that's what I had to do. Found out a few years later that she had to move back in with her parents because she was self-harming. She was doing this long before I showed up. I couldn't hold down her job. 4th in a year. She made me feel like a real piece of trash the entire time and responsible somehow for her issues. But another part of me knows if it hadn't been me, it would have been someone else. So to answer your question, it was not clean. It was not easy. And it was not without learning a lot about myself in the end. I hope my story helps. Story 9. I stayed in it too long. I'm sharing this, so if anyone else is in this sort of situation, maybe it gives you strength to leave. About 3 months in, I found out she was a user. I sat with her at her family's house when she went through withdrawal. She stayed clean, as far as I know, for almost a year. During that time, our relationship was great. We even moved in together and brought my dog to live with us. She relapsed in October. I finally got her into rehab. She left within a week. I knew then that something was going to break. A few days before the relapse, I'd asked her parents' permission to marry her, but that changed once I found out she relapsed. She started being a lot more sketchy and not as responsive to our relationship. Christmas came and went, put on a happy front for our families. I was hurting, a lot. I realized I was always focusing on her habits and what I could do to keep her clean. It stopped being healthy and started being painful. I had stayed up multiple nights when she was relapsing to make sure she didn't sneak away at night. I was blinded by my love for her. Beginning of January, I found her laptop out with her messenger open in her bed. I saw messages to her ex, her supplier, and a bunch of people asking for their money. After reading the messages, I could name 4 people she was running substances for. She had been sleeping with her ex to pay for pills, and she owed a lot of people money. She came home and I confronted her. Lots of yelling, lots of pain. I ended the relationship. I felt numb. She left for a couple days, but then came back and her name was still on the lease. I had to live with her for 5 months. Thankfully, our place was a 2-bedroom. She had multiple people over throughout the nights. I was scared, so I was locking my door at night and when I left the house. Money went missing if I left it out too long. Eventually, one of the guys she was hanging out with was wanted by the cops, and they stopped by looking for my ex. She wasn't there and left for about a week. I was scared at this time. I took my dog to my grandparents and left him there. I was still in college and couldn't move or leave. Finally, she came back and I called the cops since they wanted her. They questioned her, questioned me, etc. I was taking chemistry at the time and they found my beaker and balance for weighing things and I had to explain to them. Thankfully, my ex told them that I wasn't involved and I didn't know anything. That was the last good thing she did for me. The cops searched her room and found evidence. They told her that they wouldn't arrest her, but that they would come back soon to ask more questions. As soon as they left, she packed a bag and left the back door and wouldn't respond as I asked her where she was going. That was the last time I saw her. Her parents came over, worried sick. I looked around the area and figured out she went to the gas station and had taken a cab. Even though I grew to despise what she was doing with her life, I never wanted any harm to come to her. I wanted her out of my life and for me to move on. Her parents packed up her stuff and that was it. It took me a couple of months to feel not worried or afraid. I finally started keeping my bedroom door open at night again. I brought my dog back and he's laying in bed next to me right now. I realize now how unhappy I was, even in their relationship. It's awful to say that I was in an emotionally cruel relationship since I had such good times with her, and a lot of memories. I can say that I've moved on. I feel way happier about life, and I've started trying to date again. It was painful, depressing, and very bleak, but life moved on, and I'm happier than I've ever been. If your spouse or significant other is using and it's a problem, and you feel stuck, I urge you to leave. You can't fix them, and even though you love them so much and want to spend your life with them, they have to figure themselves out on their own. You're only enabling them by staying with them. If my ex reads this, long shot, but you never know. I don't hate you. I want you to live a free life and stay safe. I don't want to hear that you're in hospital or are in jail. We had a good life together, and I learned a lot about myself, but I'm glad we've gone separate ways, and as painful as it is to say, I hope I don't see you again. That part of our life is over and there are too many bridges burned. Good luck. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 10. I have 2 for my long and varied love life. The solution was easy, and in the case of the first, I wish I had done it months sooner. Restraining order. When you're a man, it's difficult to get anyone to take you seriously, including, no, especially, the police. Crazy ex stalked me. She was so obsessed that she skipped court-ordered supervised visits with her child from a previous relationship just to double back and check up on me, which was a big factor in her permanently losing all of her parental rights to that child. The main event at the end dragged on. For weeks, she disrupted my sleep, showing up at all hours, crying and banging on my door. Then she started breaking in as I slept, ran off into the night before the sheriff could arrive. Finally, one night I was nearly insane from sleep deprivation and head games or gaslighting. I screwed all of the doors and windows shut from the inside, did a sweep of the whole house to make sure I was alone, and she still got inside again and wrote crazy stuff on one of the walls in permanent magic marker from ceiling to floor and was chilling on the couch when I awoke late the next morning. Not long after that, she showed up and made a loud scene and broke a window in my door frame, trying to get into the house as I held the splintering door closed. Even though all of the neighbors spilled out of their houses and witnessed the whole thing with half a dozen 911 calls, she still got away again before the police arrived. Finally, there were witnesses and tangible damage, and I was able to get the police and DA to take me seriously and get an emergency protective order. Finally, the police dispatch ladies treated my calls with a modicum of respect instead of, "If she's not there anymore, there's nothing we can do. Okay, bye." This woman was so crazy determined to keep bothering me that she showed up in court to contest the restraining order, knowing she had warrants for her arrest. The judge listened to both of us, granted me the order for the maximum 3 years, then two deputies appeared behind her and led her out of the court in handcuffs. That was the last time I ever saw or heard from her. It was some time before I finally slept soundly the whole night. She was a great girlfriend for almost a year. Then her sister passed away and sent her into a spiral of misplaced guilt and suddenly unsuppressed memory. On a camping trip, she found a Christmas card in my glove box addressed to me and my ex, dated 2 months after we started dating, from someone I hadn't talked to since the year before. Said nothing. We had what seemed like a nice trip together. Snuggled up for a nap in her bed when we got home and said our goodbyes for the day. She became convinced that I was cheating. I think she started taking substances with her nephew, who stayed with her for a month around the funeral, given the level of crazy paranoia to follow. Started accusing me of all kinds of things, and shook out a sack of complaints, perceived slights, and imagined problems I'd allegedly committed throughout our relationship. I ignored her, resulting in 3 days of 75-to-1 ratio of crazy communication from her versus calm from me. Finally, she showed up at my shop around midnight to collect a watch she had gifted me, and wore once. She was nice at first, trying to apologize and reconcile. I simply placed the watch into her hands, let it fall to her feet when she refused to take it, politely told her goodnight, and closed the door. Cue the Sharknado. She started screaming and ugly crying that she wanted me to watch her end herself. When I continued to ignore her, she started breaking my collection of plants potted in expensive ceramic pots. The 911 operator could hear the crashes through two walls and closed doors. When she started targeting customers' cars and the glass front door, I put the phone down and moved to stop her before she damaged expensive things she really couldn't afford. I held her till the police arrived and took custody of her. A second unit arrived and that officer put handcuffs on me and started leading me to his car. At my request, he viewed the carnage she caused over by the door. One of the cops leading her to the first car spoke a number to him, at which point my cop visibly deflated and said, "Oh, you're the victim," and removed the cuffs. When the cops and I finally walked back to the scene and they saw the carnage exactly as described, dirt, broken plants, and pottery, and huge white diabetes pills sprinkled everywhere, each of them let out a long, "Damn." She ended up on a psychiatric hold and a few days of jail time. She sent me a few nasty emails trying to turn the entire incident around on me, and how she was the victim. I told her to stop contacting me because she had committed cruelty against me. She scoffed that this was impossible because I was the man and she was the woman. The judge didn't agree, apparently. Without having to set foot in court, he convicted her on 2 counts, placed her on 3 years probation with mandatory psychiatric counseling, applied the 3-year maximum protective or no contact order, and ordered her to pay restitution. At the victim impact hearing, the judge granted my full requested amount, which will take almost 3 years of monthly payments in her income. The kicker, who accompanied her to court that day? Her father. Story 11. I was in a seriously bad relationship with a woman who was incredibly jealous of every past relationship I was in. She owned her own home, so after dating for a bit of time before the crazy was let out, I moved in with her and took up a portion of the mortgage and bills. She made significantly more money than I did, but I felt as though I carried my weight quite a bit. Fights would begin because she would find a post on Facebook from years ago of me proclaiming love for another girl. She argued and would pour water on me if I were falling asleep after 8 hours of arguing. I was trapped because she would demand I paid rent and bills, so I had little money left, but would then kick me out. I've made dinners for her and her son, only for her in a fit of rage and threw all the food in the trash before anyone ate any of it. After kicking me out, she would be in the streets screaming at me to come back inside. Once I made a plan to escape and pawned my very expensive bicycle for $400 and made my way to a friend's place with my possessions. Thanks to an older version of Facebook Messenger, when I told her to go away, she was able to see from where the message was sent. She drove to that map location and drove around until she saw me in the window and walked in and started yelling at me in a stranger's house. My friend was a stranger to her. When I told her I was never coming back, she threatened to jump into oncoming traffic while her 10-year-old son sat in the car playing Minecraft. It gets worse for me, though. For my 30th birthday, she bought us tickets to Hawaii. I went back because I was stoked that she made such an effort to get us back on good terms. Afterwards, she started being a major obnoxious waffle again, so I took my tax return, got my own place, and ended it for good. She tried the I'm pregnant hand, even though it had been months since our last hookup. That fell through because, well, you can't fake a pregnancy. Then she sued me for $8,000 for not paying rent because I somehow owed her for the Hawaii trip. Mediation fell through because I told her to get off because I'm not giving her one of anything. Judge awarded her $2,300 because the trip seemed like a favor that could reasonably be asked to be paid back. I didn't fight it. I just told her that she'll have to get the money out of my estate or pry it from my cold fingers. I loved the look on her face when we eventually made it to court and I was able to bring my new girlfriend with me. I married that girlfriend and we have a happy family with our 11-month-old daughter. I still think of her and wish she would have a tragic accident. She nearly ruined my life. P.S. To all men in a relationship that brings you to the brink and terrible thoughts start creeping in, just know that male support is on the rise. No man should have to feel the way I felt. I didn't seek help that exists, but looking back, I wish I'd had. You're not alone in your cruelty. Cruel women are as monstrous as cruel men. Get out. Somehow, some way. Story 12. Jesus. I used to joke with friends that being married to my wife was like being married to Stalin. Any rebellion, no matter how small, was crushed ruthlessly and completely. It really wasn't a joke. She could not tolerate any disagreements and could hold a grudge until the end of time. Aside from occasionally throwing things on my head, usually a pot in the kitchen, the cruelty was emotional and very pointed. I'm not a tough guy. I'm a funny guy, a smart guy, and a nice guy. If I care about someone, I'll do anything for them. And I'm an idiot, because I never figured anyone would take advantage of that. My parents never fought in front of their kids. They did have fights, I was told later, but as far as we were concerned, adults acted like adults, and disagreements were handled in an almost debate-like manner. So to marry a woman who suddenly turns into an illogical, debate-free monster who used any cheap and dirty tricks to win an argument, and had to win every argument, put me at a disadvantage. We have 2 kids. I love them both dearly. I didn't want to hurt them or leave them with her. I felt completely trapped. Friday afternoons at work, I would sit at my lab bench and cry, knowing that for 2 days I was at her mercy. After the second child, there was no intimacy. She had what she wanted. I was not a husband. I was a father. She wasn't a wife. She was a mother. We're talking 9 years of no intimacy here. And I didn't really mind. There was no emotional connection. I walked around on eggshells, trying not to annoy her. It was difficult. And then I had an affair. A coworker. She made the first move and I responded. I couldn't believe I responded. I did so with the fervor of a man with thirst being offered a drink. And I rediscovered intimacy, with all its glories. It's fun. It's not just for procreation. My mind was blown. It changed me. I realized that I was still attractive. I was a smart, funny man that had a lot to offer a partner. The affair lasted for months and ended amicably, and sounds stupid, but I was changed, altered, woken up. A few months after the affair ended, I told my wife I wasn't happy, that I was thinking about leaving. She panicked. She suggested counseling, and I agreed. I agreed, knowing that things were done, but I wanted to go through the motions. And I did. She tried changing, tried to keep me. She was nicer, but still couldn't tolerate any disagreements. Still had to win every debate. And then in a counseling session where I knew she couldn't scream at me, I told her I wanted a divorce and I wouldn't change my mind. Things moved quickly after that. A month later, I had moved out. I got a lawyer, explained the situation. She was sympathetic and amazing. The settlement was definitely in my favor. That was 9 years ago. I reconnected with friends that she had forbidden me to see. They were all overjoyed to have me back. Started dating, even before the divorce was through. I've had several wonderful relationships, and I'm currently long-term with an amazing woman. She takes pains to tell me when I'm too apologetic, when I'm reverting to my old behavior. I look back at my old self, and he's a stranger. My kids came through like champions. I kept waiting for the shoe to drop, but they grew closer to each other and gave each other support. As they grew older, they came under similar pressure from my ex. I helped them understand what she was doing and how to deal with it. Never once have they questioned my decision to leave. They both have told me they understand why I left and that they don't blame me for it. Now, my daughter is studying to be an aerospace engineer and my son is sailing through high school and plans to become a business major. They both have my sense of humor. I couldn't be more proud. And she hasn't been in a relationship since I left. I'm guilty of taking no small pleasure in that. Life is good for me. I went through 12 years of hell, but came out with 2 amazing kids and a hard-earned sense of self-worth. I'm writing this at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm crying, remembering the past. Story 13. I don't know if this will ever get read, but I need to vent. I feel this was a sign. finding this right before falling asleep for the night, depressed. I've been unhappy, or should I say tempted, and having awful thoughts. I'm in this boat currently. Where do I begin? When I met her, she was the most amazing woman I had ever met. But over the years, I was convinced I was happy. We got engaged, we had a beautiful son together. Recently, I've been depressed. During the depression, I started unlocking the truth about our relationship, meaning I woke up. I'd always known she was a negative person, but never really grasped it. I'm one of the happiest, friendliest people you'll ever meet. I'm that guy who will talk to an old lonely lady who says hi for about an hour just to be nice and not leave her hanging if I feel she just needs that conversation for the day. Long story short, we were about to get married. I woke up to the truth that I was with a narcissist. We're talking textbook. I missed out on some great opportunities in life because of her. I even stopped being a part of my son's life. Previous child before I met her. I have two sons. Her tricks were always by using anger to shut me down. I hate confrontation, so therefore I would always drop the topic that I was trying to get off my chest about. This worked every time for her, including my child, who I miss dearly. I had a couple of instances where I believed she had cheated. Again, I was shut down with her anger when I would try to talk about it and made me feel like I was crazy. I recently became depressed because I started to realize I was not happy with her. I also realized that it made no sense for someone as positive and happy as me to continue to let someone as negative and angry as her pull me down any longer. I even missed out on an opportunity to make it big in music because of her mind games that got me to back out. When she realized that my depression was derived from her and everything she had put me through, she did a complete 180 and changed. But the person she became was what I always saw deep inside of her, but only on her best hours. I won't even say her best days because those didn't exist. I had who I always wanted, but I knew when I would confront her about not being happy, she would do this. I knew it was coming, and I started to fall for it. I became depressed because my son was my world, the one I had with her. I became depressed because it hurt me so bad that I had to leave him to leave her. And I don't mean permanently, but I mean I had to leave the kissing and hugging him goodnight every night aspect. I ended up leaving. I'm far away from him and her and the place that could save my life. I'm made out to feel like I'm some monster who has abandoned his child. Mind games and all. Not to mention I'm seeing how psycho she actually is during all of this. But I'm also getting the super sweet side, the side I always wanted from her. She claims it's because I've hurt her and broken her and I was the best person she'd ever met, and that I should give her another chance. But the truth is, I was constantly giving her chances, begging her for affection, begging her to kiss me back like she meant it, begging her to get off her phone and just watch a movie with me after her son went to bed. But now it's my fault, even though I know it's not. She makes me feel like it is, and in turn, her mind games still work. I've become depressed because I'm tired of trying. I'm tired of the fear that I will go back to her. I'm tired of fearing that even if I don't go back, she'll make my life a living hell and make me feel guilty. On the bright side, I've gotten in contact with my child, whom she made me feel bad for wanting to get into contact with. I've got my baby back in my life, and he's so amazing and just like me. And I feel complete, even though I'm broken. I'm tired. I'm so tired. I've had such a terrible life, not by choice, but by the passing of my mother and all sorts of other stuff I had no control over. Does it get better? My life is currently ruined because of leaving her. Am I making the right choice? She won't stop with her sweetness now, which makes me feel like I'm crazy for leaving in the first place. She's begging for me back. I'm so lost. I'm having anxiety attacks every day and depressive thoughts on top of it. I'm just tired. I'm just so tired of it all. I'm crying while I'm writing this, but talking to people and friends doesn't even help at this point because it's still in my head when I go to lay down every night. And the worst part, I'm the monster to our friends and her family for leaving my son and her, but I still talk to him on the phone every day. But to them, I've abandoned him. I'm just tired. Story 14. It's hard to just come out and say that I was in an emotionally cruel marriage, but that's what it was. My ex-wife cheated on me over the Christmas holiday in 2015. She told me she was visiting her ex-boyfriend. Little did I know they were doing more than just catching up for lost time. Damn me being trusting and all. After about a month of agonizing, barely looking at each other, going to therapy, I realized she wasn't trying to mend our broken relationship. I told her I wanted a divorce. After about a week hiding from her sisters, I came home one day. She had wiped the joint bank account nearly dry, took the cats, took the 4K TV, game consoles. Multiple days I'd come home from work wondering what was still left in the house. She took my daily driver one night too. That was extremely frustrating, not being able to get to work because of her greed. But let's fast forward today. I'm now divorced and have been single for a solid year. I tell people I'm working on myself, but in reality, I can't open up to anyone. I'm closer to my family now as a result of all this and know who my true friends are, but I have no desire to find another person to date. I can't give you any solid advice for what you should do with a person like my ex. She was inconsolable most of the time, and when she wasn't, she was hammered. And to be honest, when she was like that, I was kind of afraid of her. I'm no expert in handling people like that because honestly, I don't know if anyone can. I guess the best thing I can say is listen to your family and friends. They will tell you things at the time you may not want to hear or believe, but they love you and want the best for your life. Listen and know what you want in life and don't compromise. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.